The auditorium was packed. 500 faces stared at the stage, most of them wearing smirks. 17-year-old Nadia Williams stood in the spotlight, her hands trembling at her sides as she approached the grand piano. She wore a simple navy dress her mother had pressed that morning, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Behind her, she could hear the whispers, the barely contained laughter. Mrs. Catherine Bradford sat in the third row, arms crossed, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Next to her, Bethany Cooper and her friends leaned into each other, phones ready to capture what they assumed would be a disaster worth sharing. This was the joke they'd been waiting for. The punchline they'd set up 3 weeks ago, when they'd encouraged this poor black girl to sign up for the talent show. But then Nadia sat down. Her fingers found the keys. And 3 minutes later, that room fell into a silence so profound you could hear hearts breaking. The laughter died in their throats. The smirks melted away. And Mrs. Bradford's face drained of all color as she realized the enormous mistake she'd made. What happened in those 3 minutes? How did a girl they'd dismissed as a charity case silence an entire auditorium? And why would those teachers spend the rest of their lives regretting that one cruel joke? This is that story. And it starts not on that stage, but in a cramped living room in the poorest part of Louisiana, where a dream refused to die. Bayou Ridge, Louisiana, wasn't the kind of place that showed up in travel brochures. It was the kind of town where the gas station doubled as the only grocery store, where the railroad tracks divided the haves from the have-nots with brutal efficiency, and where dreams were luxuries most people couldn't afford. The south side of those tracks, where Nadia Williams lived, seemed to exist in permanent sepia tone, all faded paint and cracked sidewalks and houses that leaned like tired old men. The Williams house sat at the end of Cypress Street, a shotgun-style cottage that had been in the family for 3 generations. It wasn't much, just 3 rooms strung together like railroad cars, but it was home. The front porch sagged in the middle. The screen door hung crooked on its hinges. In the summer, you could see through the floorboards to the dust beneath. But inside, Janet Williams kept everything spotless. What they lacked in money, she insisted they would make up for in dignity. Janet worked 2 jobs. The day shift at the nursing home, where she cleaned rooms and changed bed sheets, then the evening shift at the diner downtown, where she served coffee and forced smiles to customers who barely acknowledged her existence. She came home smelling like bleach and fryer grease, her feet swollen in her worn sneakers, but she never complained. Not in front of her kids. Nadia was the oldest of 3. At 17, she'd become a second mother to her younger siblings, 12-year-old Marcus and 9-year-old Keisha. She made their breakfast before school, helped with homework, braided Keisha's hair, made sure Marcus did his chores. Their father, James Williams, had died 9 years ago. A heart attack at 38, sudden and cruel. One day he was there teaching Nadia to read music, his hands guiding hers across piano keys. The next day, he was gone, leaving behind a grief so heavy it seemed to press the oxygen out of their small house. But James had left something else too. In the corner of their cramped living room, pushed against the wall beneath the one window that looked out onto Cypress Street, sat an upright piano. A Baldwin Hamilton manufactured in 1987, its wood case scratched and faded, several keys sticking, the soundboard cracked. It had belonged to James's mother, passed down when she died, and it was the most valuable thing the Williams family owned, though you couldn't tell by looking at it. James had played that piano every Sunday after church. Gospel, mostly. Amazing Grace, and His eye is on the sparrow, and Precious Lord, take my hand. His playing wasn't professional, but it was heartfelt, and when his fingers moved across those keys, that cramped living room transformed into something holy. Nadia would sit on the floor beside him, watching his hands absorbing not just the music, but the joy it brought him. The way his shoulders relaxed, the way his face softened, the way for those few minutes the hardness of their life seemed to fade. After he died, no one touched the piano for a year. It sat silent, gathering dust, a monument to absence. But then, on the anniversary of his death, 8-year-old Nadia climbed onto the bench and pressed a key. Just one note, middle C. The sound rang through the house, and Janet, who'd been folding laundry in the back room, stopped. Keisha, who'd been just a baby, looked up, and something shifted. That's when Nadia began teaching herself to play. There was no money for lessons. Janet was already drowning in bills, working herself to the bone, just to keep food on the table and the lights on. Piano teachers were a luxury from another universe, so Nadia improvised. She found her father's old books in a box under his bed, beginner method books with yellowed pages and handwritten notes in the margins. She checked out library books on music theory, reading about scales and chords and progressions in the quiet hours before school. And then she discovered YouTube. In the library after school, on the ancient computers that took 5 minutes to load a single page, Nadia would watch video after video. Free piano tutorials. Classical pieces broken down measure by measure. Technique demonstrations filmed in the kitchens and living rooms of people around the world who were generous enough to share their knowledge. She'd watch the same 30-second clip 20 times, memorizing the finger positions, the hand shapes, the way the wrists stayed loose and relaxed. Then she'd go home and practice. Every night after her mother left for the evening shift at the diner, after she'd fed Marcus and Keisha and supervised homework and gotten them ready for bed, Nadia would sit at that old Baldwin. The keys stuck. Some notes didn't sound at all. Others rang out tinny and sharp, the result of strings that hadn't been tuned in a decade. But Nadia played anyway. She started with simple pieces, children's songs, basic scales. Her fingers were clumsy at first, missing notes, fumbling transitions. But she was patient, methodical. She practiced the same passage 50 times, 100 times, until her fingers remembered the pattern without her having to think. The neighbors complained about the noise. Mrs. Chen next door banged on the wall. Mr. Roberts across the street yelled from his porch. But Janet told them all the same thing: my daughter's learning. You'll deal with it. By the time Nadia turned 14, she could play hymns from memory. By 15, she was working through simplified versions of Bach and Beethoven. By 16, she'd taught herself Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major op. 9. Number 2. One of the most beautiful and technically challenging pieces in the classical repertoire. Her playing wasn't perfect. The piano's limitations made sure of that. But there was something in the way she played, something raw and honest and deeply felt, that transcended the mechanical imperfections. When Nadia played, she wasn't just hitting keys. She was having a conversation with her father. Every note was a word. Every phrase was a memory. Every rest was a breath shared across the veil between the living and the dead. The piano was her connection to James Williams, and through it she felt less alone. Music, she discovered, was the only language that could say what she felt when words failed her. And in a world that often felt hostile and dismissive, that meant everything. Nadia didn't go to Bayou Ridge High, the underfunded school on her side of the tracks where classes were overcrowded and textbooks were decades out of date. She'd earned an academic scholarship to Fairmont Preparatory Academy, the private school across town, where the children of doctors and lawyers and business owners went to secure their futures. It was an opportunity Janet had fought hard to get her daughter filling out applications late at night at the kitchen table, writing essay after essay about why Nadia deserved a chance. Fairmont Prep was a different universe. The building looked like a colonial mansion, all white columns and manicured lawns and brick pathways winding between buildings. The parking lot was full of new cars, BMWs, and Mercedes vehicles that cost more than the Williams family would see in 5 years. Inside, the hallways gleamed. The classrooms had smart boards and laptops for every student. The library had more books than Nadia had ever seen in one place. But Nadia didn't belong there, and everyone made sure she knew it. She was one of 5 black students in a school of 400, the only one on scholarship from the South Side. Her clothes came from thrift stores carefully selected and maintained, but they weren't the brands that mattered. Her backpack was generic, not North Face or Patagonia. She brought lunch from home in a reusable container while everyone else bought from the gourmet cafeteria or went off campus to the sandwich shop down the street. The exclusion was rarely overt. No one called her names or shoved her in the hallway. Fairmont students were too well trained in propriety for that. Instead, the cruelty was subtle. The conversations that stopped when she approached. The group projects where she was always the last one picked. The parties she heard about on Monday that she'd never been invited to. The way teachers would call on her and then seem surprised when she knew the answer, as if her intelligence was unexpected. But the worst of it happened in music class. Mrs. Catherine Bradford had been teaching music at Fairmont Prep for 23 years. She was a formidable woman in her late 50s, her gray hair always perfectly styled, her clothing expensive and tasteful, her manner exuding the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of being right about everything. She'd studied music at Juilliard. She'd performed with regional symphonies. She'd taught hundreds of students, many of whom had gone on to prestigious music programs. She knew music, and she knew talent when she saw it. Or so she thought. Mrs. Bradford's classroom was a shrine to classical music. Posters of composers lined the walls. A beautiful grand piano sat in the corner, its surface gleaming. The students she favored, the ones who took private lessons from expensive teachers and performed in youth symphonies, sat in the front rows. They were the chosen ones, the talents she nurtured and showcased. The rest were background noise. Nadia sat in the back corner near the window, trying to be invisible. Mrs. Bradford barely acknowledged her existence. On the rare occasions she called on Nadia, it was with a tone that suggested she didn't expect much. When they'd had to introduce themselves at the beginning of the year and say what instrument they played, Nadia had quietly mentioned that she played piano. Mrs. Bradford had looked at her with barely concealed skepticism. "Oh, how long have you been taking lessons?" "I don't take lessons," Nadia had said. "I teach myself." The smile that crossed Mrs. Bradford's face was thin and patronizing. "I see. Well, piano is a very complex instrument. It really does require proper instruction to develop correct technique. But it's wonderful that you have an interest." That was it. Dismissed. Categorized. Filed away as not worth her time. Bethany Cooper, who sat 2 rows ahead of Nadia, had turned around and smirked. Bethany was everything Nadia wasn't. Rich white blonde, effortlessly popular. She'd been playing piano since she was 4. She had a Steinway Grand at home and a teacher who charged $200 an hour. She performed in recitals at the Community Arts Center and had won competitions. And she made sure everyone knew it. Self-taught Bethany had whispered to her friend Madison, loud enough for Nadia to hear. "That's cute." The laughter was quiet but cruel. Nadia had learned to stay silent after that. She participated when required, but never volunteered. She kept her head down and counted the minutes until class was over. Music, which had been her sanctuary, became another place where she didn't belong. But she never stopped playing at home. If anything, she played more. Every night at that old Baldwin, working through pieces that grew increasingly complex, pushing herself harder and harder. The piano didn't care about her clothes or her zip code or the color of her skin. The piano just responded to her touch. And in those late night hours when the house was quiet and her fingers moved across the keys, Nadia felt like herself. She had no idea that her two worlds were about to collide in the most public and devastating way possible. It was a Wednesday in late March when Mrs. Bradford made the announcement that would change everything. Spring was pushing through the Louisiana humidity, and the classroom windows were open, letting in the smell of cut grass and the distant sound of the baseball team practicing. Mrs. Bradford stood at the front of the room, her hands clasped in front of her, looking pleased with herself. "I have exciting news," she said, her voice carrying the theatrical emphasis she reserved for important occasions. As many of you know, Fairmont Prep's annual Spring Talent Showcase is coming up in 3 weeks. This year is particularly special because we'll have distinguished guests judging the performances. A murmur went through the classroom. The Spring Talent Showcase was the school's biggest event, held in the main auditorium with an audience that included parents, faculty, school board members, and local community leaders. It was a chance to shine, to show off, to add another line to college applications. We'll have Professor Richard Chen from Tulane's music department. Mrs. Bradford continued, as well as Sandra Martinez, the music director from the Louisiana Philharmonic, and James Kowalski, who owns the Kowalski School of Music downtown. These are not people who give out praise lightly. This is a tremendous opportunity for our most talented students to be seen by professionals who can open doors. Her gaze swept across the front rows, lingering on her favorites. Bethany Cooper, Madison Price, Trevor Holmes, the students who'd been groomed for exactly this moment. "I expect our music program to be well represented," Mrs. Bradford said. "I'm particularly hoping that those of you with serious training will consider participating. This isn't the time for amateur hour. We need to put our best foot forward." Nadia sat in her corner, staring at her notebook. The message was clear. This wasn't for people like her. This was for the real musicians, the ones who mattered. But something twisted inside her chest as she listened. A small, desperate voice that said, "You could do this. You could play. You could show them what you've been working on." She immediately pushed the thought away. It was fantasy. Even if she had the courage to sign up, which she didn't, she'd just embarrass herself. Mrs. Bradford would probably refuse to let her participate. And even if she was allowed, the mockery would be unbearable. It was better to stay invisible, safer. After class, as students filed out chattering about who would sign up and what they'd perform, Nadia gathered her books and headed for the door. She didn't notice Mrs. Bradford watching her. She didn't see the calculating look that passed between the teacher and Bethany Cooper. She was already thinking about getting home, about the 2 hours of piano practice she had planned before her mother came back from her shift. She had no idea what was about to happen. It happened 2 days later, on a Friday afternoon. Nadia was at her locker switching out textbooks when she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up to find Mrs. Bradford standing there, flanked by Bethany and Madison. The teacher's expression was warm, friendly, even, but something about it felt wrong, like a mask that didn't quite fit. "Nadia," Mrs. Bradford said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that Nadia had never heard directed at her before. "I wanted to talk to you about the talent showcase." Nadia's stomach tightened. "Okay. I've been thinking," Mrs. Bradford continued, that it would be wonderful to have diverse representation in our program. And you mentioned that you play piano, correct? I do. But excellent. Mrs. Bradford clasped her hands together. I really think you should sign up to perform. It would be such a valuable experience for you. Nadia stared at her confused. This didn't make sense. Mrs. Bradford had made it clear all year that she didn't think Nadia's playing was serious. Why the sudden interest? Bethany leaned in, her smile sharp. Yeah, Nadia, you should totally do it. It would be so brave of you. The way she said brave made Nadia's skin prickle. There was something underneath the word, something mocking. I don't know, Nadia said slowly. I'm not really at the level nonsense, Mrs. Bradford cut her off. You play, don't you? You've been practicing? Then you should share that with everyone. I really think it would be wonderful. Madison nodded enthusiastically. It would be amazing. We'd love to see what you can do. There was something choreographed about this, Nadia realized. The three of them approaching her together. The sudden enthusiasm. The encouragement that felt too eager, too performative. But she couldn't quite understand what was happening. Maybe they were being genuine, maybe Mrs. Bradford had changed her mind about her. What would I even play? Nadia asked, her voice uncertain. Oh, anything, Mrs. Bradford waved her hand dismissively. Whatever you feel comfortable with. The important thing is participation, putting yourself out there. Don't you think that's important? Behind Mrs. Bradford, a few other students had gathered, drawn by the unusual sight of the music teacher actually talking to Nadia Williams. They watched with interest. Waiting. Nadia felt trapped. If she said no, she'd look scared, unwilling to try. But if she said yes, what? She'd embarrass herself. Give them exactly what they wanted. But then she thought about her father's piano, about the hours she'd spent teaching herself, about the pieces she'd mastered in the privacy of her living room, with no teacher and no fancy instrument. Wasn't she good? Didn't she deserve a chance to show what she could do? Pride made the decision for her. Okay, Nadia heard herself say. I'll sign up, Mrs. Bradford's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Wonderful, I'll make sure you're on the list. This will be very educational for you. They walked away, and Nadia heard the laughter start before they'd even turned the corner. Quiet giggles that grew louder as they disappeared down the hallway. Her face burned. She closed her locker with shaking hands. She'd just been set up. She understood that now. This was a joke. They wanted her to embarrass herself in front of the whole school. They wanted to watch her fail. For a moment, she considered backing out, just not showing up, letting them win. But then something hardened inside her chest. A stubborn, angry determination that felt like her father's hands on her shoulders. If they wanted a show, she'd give them one. But it wouldn't be the show they were expecting. That night, Nadia told her mother what happened. They sat at the kitchen table, the one that wobbled on its uneven legs, eating the chicken and rice Janet had thrown together before her evening shift. Marcus and Keisha were already in bed. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the ancient refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the main road. They want you to fail, Janet said flatly when Nadia finished explaining. It wasn't a question. I know. Nadia pushed rice around her plate. I was stupid to say yes. No. Janet reached across and took her daughter's hand. You weren't stupid. You were brave. There's a difference. But Mama, what if I do fail? What if I get up there and mess up and everyone laughs? What if I make it worse? Janet was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the living room, and came back carrying something. It was an old photograph in a cheap frame. Nadia's father at the piano, his hands on the keys, his face lit with joy. She set it on the table between them. "Your daddy used to say something," Janet said softly. "He'd say, 'Music is your voice when words fail you.'" You remember that Nadia nodded, her throat tight. He believed that with everything in him. And baby, you've got his gift. I've heard you play. I know what you can do. Those people at that school, they don't know you. They don't see you. But that doesn't mean you're invisible. That doesn't mean you don't matter. "But I'm scared," Nadia whispered. "I know. I'm scared too." Janet squeezed her hand. "But here's the thing about being scared. You can let it stop you, or you can let it fuel you. Your choice." Nadia looked at her father's photograph, at his hands on the keys. She thought about all the hours she'd spent at that old Baldwin teaching herself, pushing through frustration and doubt. She thought about the music that lived inside her, waiting to be heard. "I'm going to play Chopin," she said suddenly, "the Nocturne in E-flat major, Op. 9, number 2, or Janet's eyebrows rose. "That's a hard piece, baby. I know. I've been working on it for months. I can do it." Nadia met her mother's eyes. "If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to play something easy and safe. I'm going to play something that shows them exactly what I can do." A smile spread across Janet's face, fierce and proud. "Then you better practice." And Nadia did. For the next 3 weeks, she lived and breathed that piece. She woke at 5 in the morning to practice before school. She skipped lunch to watch technique videos in the library. She came home from her after-school job at the convenience store and practiced until midnight, her fingers moving over the keys in the dark, guided by muscle memory and sheer determination. The Nocturne was unforgiving. Chopin had written it to showcase everything a pianist could do: delicate phrasing, emotional depth, technical precision, dynamic control. Every note had to be perfect. Every transition had to be seamless. There was nowhere to hide, no way to fake it. You either played it well, or you didn't. Nadia's fingers developed calluses. The tips cracked and bled from the constant pressure. Her back ached from hunching over the keyboard. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But she kept going. She played the piece so many times that she started dreaming about it, her sleeping mind working through passages, finding new interpretations, deeper meanings. The old piano fought her every step of the way. Keys stuck, notes rang flat, the pedal squeaked. But Nadia learned to work around its limitations, adjusting her technique, finding ways to make beauty despite the imperfections. In a way, the broken piano made her better. It forced her to listen more carefully, to compensate, to find the music beneath the mechanical failures. But she wasn't doing this alone. Nadia's routine became obsessive. 5 a.m. every morning, no matter how little sleep she'd gotten. She'd roll out of bed in the dark, splash cold water on her face, and go straight to the piano. The house was silent at that hour, just her and the instrument, and the piece that had become her entire world. Her fingers moved through the opening phrases, that iconic melody that everyone recognized even if they didn't know the name. Slow, deliberate, each note, hanging in the air like a question waiting to be answered. The Nocturne required patience. It couldn't be rushed. Every note had space around it, silence that was as much a part of the music as the sound. But it also required precision. The left hand established a steady rhythm, an accompaniment that had to be consistent without being mechanical. The right hand floated above it, spinning out that gorgeous melody with all its ornamentations and subtle variations. Getting both hands to work together, independent yet unified, was like learning to juggle while walking a tightrope. Nadia worked through it, measure by measure. She'd play a single phrase 50 times, focusing on the dynamics, the shaping the way one note led into the next. She'd slow it down to half speed, watching her fingers, making sure every movement was efficient and correct. Then she'd speed it up, gradually building muscle memory, letting her hands learn the patterns so deeply that thinking became unnecessary. School was a blur. She sat in classes but barely absorbed anything, her mind still at the piano, working through problems, hearing the music in her head. In English, while they discussed The Great Gatsby, she was thinking about the transition in measure 37. In history, during a lecture on the Civil War, she was mentally practicing the tricky passage in measure 43 where the melody jumped across octaves. Her grades started slipping. Nothing dramatic, just enough for teachers to notice. But Nadia couldn't bring herself to care. This was more important. This was everything. Lunch became practice time. She'd found that the music room at school was usually empty during the lunch period. Most kids were in the cafeteria or hanging out in the courtyard. Nadia would slip in through the side door, make sure no one was around, and go to the piano in the corner. It was a beautiful instrument, a Yamaha Grand that was properly tuned and maintained. Playing it after her broken Baldwin at home was like driving a luxury car after learning on a broken bicycle. She'd practice for 30 minutes, losing herself in the music, and then slip out again before anyone noticed, or so she thought. Or so. The piano at home was becoming a real problem. 3 keys were now completely stuck. The D above middle C wouldn't sound at all, just a dead thunk when pressed. The G2 octaves up rang out with a terrible metallic twang that made Nadia wince every time. The middle pedal had stopped working entirely. She tried to fix it herself. She watched YouTube videos on basic piano repair, learned about the felt hammers and the dampers, and the complex machinery inside the instrument. She borrowed tools from Mr. Roberts next door and opened up the back of the piano, staring at the overwhelming complexity of strings and levers and wooden components that all had to work together perfectly. She managed to unstick one of the keys by carefully adjusting the hammer. She tightened some screws that had come loose. But the fundamental problems, the issues that required professional repair and tuning, were beyond her capability. And there was no money for that. Janet was already working herself to exhaustion. Nadia couldn't ask for more. So she adapted. She learned to play around the dead notes, slightly altering her fingering to avoid them. She learned to press harder on some keys to coax sound out of reluctant hammers. She learned to ignore the tinny, out-of-tune quality and focus on the emotional content, the phrasing, the things that mattered more than mechanical perfection. But it was frustrating, heartbreaking sometimes. She'd play a passage, beautifully feel it coming together, and then hit that dead D and the whole thing would fall apart. She'd have to start over, adjust, compensate. It felt like trying to paint a masterpiece with half her colors missing. The doubt came at night in those hours between midnight and 2 a.m., when she was exhausted and her fingers hurt, and nothing seemed to be working right. She'd sit at the piano, hands in her lap, and think, "What am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? They're going to laugh at me no matter how well I play. They've already decided I'm a joke." She'd think about Bethany Cooper's Steinway Grand, about the expensive lessons and the perfect technique, and the years of advantages that Nadia could never compete with. She'd think about Mrs. Bradford's dismissive smile, about the way the teacher had never once taken her seriously. She'd think about standing on that stage alone under the lights and failing in front of everyone. More than once, she almost gave up. Almost decided to back out to tell them she couldn't do it after all. But then she'd think about her father, about his hands on these same keys, about the way he'd close his eyes when he played, completely present in the music, and how happy it made him. How free. And she'd start practicing again. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks before the talent showcase, when Nadia's secret was discovered. She'd slipped into the music room during lunch, as usual, sat down at the Yamaha Grand, and started working through the middle section of the nocturne. She was so focused on the music that she didn't hear the door open, didn't realize anyone had entered until a voice spoke behind her. Your pedaling is inconsistent. Nadia spun around, hands flying off the keys, heart hammering. Standing near the door, leaning on his mop, was Mr. Henry Davis, the school janitor. He was an older black man, probably in his 70s, thin and stooped with age, his hair completely white. Nadia had seen him around campus but had never spoken to him. The staff was usually invisible at Fairmont Prep present, but unacknowledged. "I'm sorry," Nadia stammered. "I didn't mean to. I'll leave. I didn't tell you to leave." Mr. Davis moved further into the room, his steps slow but deliberate. "I said your pedaling is inconsistent. You're blurring the lines between phrases. The pedal is part of the music, not just something you press." Nadia stared at him, confused. "You know about piano?" Something that might have been. Amusement flickered across his weathered face. "Child, I taught piano for 40 years, retired 10 years ago. Took this job because sitting at home was driving me crazy." He gestured towards the piano. "Play it again, the section you were just working on." Nadia hesitated, then turned back to the keyboard. She played the passage, hyper-aware now of her pedaling of the way she was sustaining notes. When she finished, she looked back at Mr. Davis. "Better," he said. "But you're thinking too much about technique, and not enough about what you're trying to say. Chopin wrote this piece about longing, about beauty that hurts, because you know it won't last. You're playing it like a math problem." The criticism stung, but Nadia recognized the truth in it. She'd been so focused on getting the notes right that she'd lost sight of the emotion. "How do I fix that?" she asked quietly. Mr. Davis came closer, stood beside the piano. "Tell me about yourself. Why are you hiding in here practicing during lunch?" So Nadia told him. The whole story came spilling out, the talent showcase, the joke, her broken piano at home, her father's death, the years of teaching herself. Mr. Davis listened without interrupting, his face thoughtful. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Play it again. But this time think about your father. Think about what you want to tell him. Let the music be your words." Nadia took a breath and began again. This time she didn't think about her fingers or her pedaling or the judges who would be watching. She thought about her father's hands guiding hers across the keys when she was small. She thought about the hole his absence had left in their lives. She thought about her mother working herself to exhaustion. She thought about Marcus and Keisha and the future she was trying to build for all of them. The music changed. It was still the same notes, the same piece, but now it breathed. It spoke. It ached with genuine emotion. When she finished, her eyes were wet. Mr. Davis nodded slowly. "That," he said, "that's what they need to hear." From that day forward, Mr. Davis became Nadia's secret mentor. He couldn't officially teach her. That would have been inappropriate given his position at the school. But he could happen to be cleaning the music room during her lunch practices. He could just be passing by and offer observations. He could share decades of knowledge and experience in brief comments and subtle guidance. He taught her how to shape phrases, how to let some notes swell and others fade. He taught her about rubato, that slight flexibility in tempo that made music feel human rather than robotic. He taught her to use her whole body when playing, not just her fingers, to rock gently with the rhythm, to feel the music in her shoulders and back and core. "Technique is important," he told her one day, "but technique without soul is just noise. You've got the soul. Now we're just polishing the technique." He also gave her something equally important: confidence. For the first time in her life, Nadia had someone who believed in her talent without reservation. Not because she was a charity case or a diversity statistic, but because he recognized genuine ability when he heard it. "You're a good child," he told her bluntly. Better than most students I taught who went on to music school. That broken piano you've been learning on, that's probably made you stronger. You've had to work harder, listen more carefully. You've earned every bit of skill you have. The praise meant everything. It carried Nadia through the hardest moments of doubt. The week before the talent showcase, the bullying intensified. Bethany and her friends made sure everyone knew about Nadia's big performance. They'd mock practice in the hallways, playing imaginary pianos while making exaggerated faces. They'd loudly discuss how brave it was for someone with no real training to get up in front of professional judges. They'd speculate about how long it would take before Nadia gave up and ran off stage in tears. Mrs. Bradford, for her part, played the role of encouraging teacher in public while making little comments designed to undermine Nadia's confidence. "I hope you're not feeling too much pressure," she'd say sweetly in class. "Remember, it's just about participating. No one expects perfection from you." The subtext was clear. You're going to fail, and everyone knows it. Nadia endured it all in silence. She stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, stopped going to her locker between classes except when absolutely necessary. She made herself as invisible as possible, conserving her energy for the only thing that mattered, the music. Her fingers were a mess. The tips were calloused and cracked, stained with spots of dried blood from where the skin had broken from constant practice. She wrapped them in bandages at night, soaked them in warm water, applied ointment. But every morning she was back at the piano, pain be damned. 3 days before the performance, Mr. Davis gave her a gift. He pulled a small package from his cleaning cart, wrapped in newspaper. Nadia unwrapped it to find a bow tie, old and faded, but clearly well made, the kind a pianist might wear for a formal recital. "This belonged to your father," Mr. Davis said quietly. "He gave it to me years ago after I heard him play at church. Said it brought him luck, and he wanted to pass that luck on to someone who needed it. I've been holding on to it, waiting for the right person." He smiled. "I think you're that person." Nadia's throat closed up. She couldn't speak. She just nodded and clutched the bow tie to her chest. "You're ready," Mr. Davis said. "More ready than you know. Now you just have to believe it." The night before the showcase, Nadia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through the piece in her mind. Her fingers twitched against the sheets, playing imaginary keys. Beside her, Keisha slept peacefully, one small arm thrown across Nadia's stomach. In the living room, she could hear her mother moving around, getting ready for the late shift at the diner. Nadia slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake her sister. She found her mother in the kitchen, packing her lunch. "Can't sleep?" Janet asked. Nadia shook her head. Janet set down her sandwich and came over, pulled her daughter into a hug. "You're going to be amazing tomorrow. You know that, right?" "What if I'm not?" Nadia whispered into her mother's shoulder. "What if I mess up? What if they were right all along?" Janet pulled back, held Nadia's face between her hands. "Listen to me. Tomorrow you're going to walk onto that stage. You're going to sit at that piano, and you're going to play. Not for them. Not for those teachers or those kids who've been cruel to you. You're going to play for you, for your daddy, for everyone who told you that you couldn't. You understand?" Nadia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "And no matter what happens," Janet continued fiercely, "I am so proud of you. You've already won just by having the courage to try. Everything else is just details." They held each other for a long moment. Then Janet had to leave for work, and Nadia went back to bed. This time exhaustion finally pulled her under into dreams filled with music. Tomorrow, everything would change. The Fairmont Prep Auditorium was a source of pride for the school, a genuine theater-style space that seated 500 people. The main floor sloped down toward the stage rows of plush seats in burgundy fabric. A balcony wrapped around the back and sides. The stage itself was large and professional, with proper lighting and curtains, and enough space for full orchestra performances. Tonight, every seat was filled. Parents had come dressed for the occasion, the mothers in cocktail dresses and pearls, the fathers in blazers and expensive watches. Faculty members occupied the front rows, chatting with school board members and donors. Local reporters from the community newspaper were there, cameras ready. This was an event, an opportunity to showcase Fairmont Prep's commitment to the arts and academic excellence. The judges sat at a special table to the left of the stage. Professor Richard Chen from Tulane, distinguished in his gray suit. Sandra Martinez from the Louisiana Philharmonic, elegant in a black dress. And James Kowalski, owner of the largest private music school in the region, stern-faced and notoriously difficult to impress. They had clipboards and evaluation forms. They were not here to be kind. Backstage was chaos. 23 students were performing tonight in various categories: vocal instrumental dance and dramatic monologue. The music performances were scattered throughout the program to provide variety. Bethany Cooper was performing 10th, a Brahms piece that she'd been perfecting with her expensive teacher. Trevor Holmes was doing a violin concerto. Madison Price was singing an aria from La Bohème. Nadia Williams was scheduled last, spot 23, the closing act. She stood in the corner of the backstage area, trying to stay out of the way and control her breathing. She wore the navy dress her mother had pressed simple and clean with her father's bow tie pinned to the collar. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She looked small and out of place among the other performers in their designer dresses and tailored suits. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Through the curtain, she could hear the program progressing. Each performance was announced, received with applause, judged. Some acts were clearly excellent, receiving standing ovations and enthusiastic responses. Others were less polished, but still well received with encouraging applause. The audience was in good spirits, enjoying the evening. No one knew what was coming. Nadia found a spot behind some equipment crates where she could be alone. She closed her eyes and went through the piece in her mind one more time. The opening phrase, the transition at measure 14, the tricky passage in the middle section, the climax, the delicate ending. She knew every note, every pause, every emotion. "Hey!" Nadia's eyes snapped open. Bethany Cooper stood in front of her, already finished with her performance. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her dress probably cost more than Nadia's family made in a month. And her smile was cruel. "I just wanted to wish you luck," Bethany said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I mean, you're going to need it. Going last is brutal. Everyone's tired. The judges are exhausted. And after the performances they've seen tonight." She laughed. "Well, let's just say the bar has been set pretty high, but I'm sure you'll do your best." Madison appeared beside her. "We're all really curious to see what you've prepared. Mrs. Bradford said you chose Chopin. That's so ambitious for someone who's self-taught. Maybe a little too ambitious," Bethany added. "But hey, points for confidence, right?" They walked away giggling, and Nadia's hands shook harder. She pressed them together, trying to steady herself. She thought about Mr. Davis's words. "You're ready." She thought about her mother. "Play for you." She thought about her father's hands on the keys. She could do this. She had to do this. Nadia Williams. She looked up to find the stage manager, a harried senior with a headset and clipboard. "You're up next. Get ready." This was it. Nadia moved to the wings, her legs feeling disconnected from her body. She could see the stage now, brilliantly lit, the grand piano positioned center stage like a throne. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see the audience, all those faces turned expectantly toward the stage. Her stomach churned. The current performer finished a dramatic monologue from Hamlet delivered by a senior boy named Christopher. The audience applauded enthusiastically. Christopher took his bow and exited stage right, passing Nadia without a glance. The stage manager spoke into his headset, coordinating with the lighting booth and the MC. Then Mr. Patterson, the school principal, walked onto the stage. He was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of voice that commanded attention. He held a microphone and smiled at the audience. And now for our final performance of the evening, he announced we have junior Nadia Williams performing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat Major Opus 9, number 2. The applause that followed was polite but muted. Most of the audience had no idea who Nadia was. The ones who did the students and their parents who knew about the joke leaned forward with interest phones out ready to capture what they expected to be either a disaster or at best a mediocre performance from the scholarship kid who didn't know her place. In the third row, Mrs. Bradford sat with her arms crossed, that familiar, patronizing smile on her face. Bethany and Madison were a few rows back, barely containing their giggles. Other students watched with varying degrees of curiosity and cruelty. But there were other faces, too. In the back row, partly hidden by shadow, Mr. Henry Davis stood with his cleaning cart. He'd stayed late on purpose, using work as an excuse to be here. He nodded at Nadia, a small gesture of encouragement. And there, in the cheap seats at the very back, the ones reserved for family members who couldn't afford the expensive tickets down front, sat Janet Williams, with Marcus and Keisha on either side of her. Janet's face was tense with worry and pride and fierce determination. Marcus waved just a little. Keisha bounced in her seat with excitement. Nadia took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding, hot and white and all-consuming. She couldn't see the audience anymore, just a dark mass beyond the glare. Her footsteps echoed. The stage seemed massive, an impossible distance to cross. But she walked steadily, head up toward the piano. Someone in the audience snickered. A whisper spread. She heard the word brave said with mocking emphasis, heard another whisper about her dress, her appearance, her presumption in being here at all. Nadia reached the piano. The Steinway Grand gleamed under the lights, its black surface mirror smooth. She adjusted the bench, sat down, settled herself. Her hands hovered over the keys. This close, the mocking whispers were clearer. She could hear Bethany's distinctive laugh, could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, most of them expecting her to fail. She thought about her broken Baldwin at home, about the dead keys and the out-of-tune strings. This piano would respond perfectly. There would be no excuses. Either she could play or she couldn't. Nadia closed her eyes. She thought about her father's photograph on the kitchen table. She thought about the nights she'd practiced until her fingers bled. She thought about Mr. Davis's encouragement and her mother's fierce belief. She thought about every moment of doubt and fear and determination that had led her to this stage. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne floated into the auditorium, soft and clear and impossibly beautiful. That iconic melody, so familiar and yet somehow always surprising, emerged from the piano like dawn breaking over water. Delicate, inevitable, perfect. The mocking whispers stopped. In the audience, heads turned. The slight movements and rustling that had characterized the crowd all evening ceased, as if someone had pressed pause. Even the students who'd been checking their phones looked up, drawn by something in the sound that demanded attention. Nadia's fingers moved across the keys with precision and grace. The left hand established that rolling accompaniment pattern, steady and supportive, while the right hand sang the melody above it. The balance was perfect. The phrasing was exquisite. Every note was exactly where it needed to be, neither rushed nor delayed, each one given space to resonate before the next one came. This wasn't amateur hour. This was legitimate musicianship. Professor Chen leaned forward at the judge's table, his critical expression shifting to one of surprise. Sandra Martinez set down her pen and just listened. James Kowalski's stern face softened, his mouth slightly open. Mrs. Bradford's smile had vanished. She sat frozen, her hand halfway to her mouth, staring at the stage with an expression of dawning horror. This wasn't supposed to happen. This girl, this poor black girl from the South Side who'd taught herself on a broken piano, this scholarship student they'd encouraged as a joke, she was actually good. No, she was better than good. She was extraordinary. Bethany Cooper had gone pale. The phone she'd been holding to record Nadia's embarrassment hung limp in her hand, forgotten. Madison sat rigid beside her, unable to process what she was hearing. But Nadia didn't see any of this. Her eyes were closed. She was somewhere else entirely, in that place where music lived, where technique transformed into emotion and notes became language more eloquent than words could ever be. As the piece progressed into its middle section, the complexity increased. The melody moved into higher registers, the left hand became more intricate, the emotional content deepened. This was where lesser pianists faltered, where the technical demands became overwhelming. But Nadia navigated it all with confidence and grace. Her hands knew exactly what to do. The thousands of hours of practice had carved the patterns into her muscle memory so deeply that conscious thought became unnecessary. She played a particularly challenging passage, a cascade of notes that required perfect finger independence and control. It came out flawlessly, and there was an audible gasp from someone in the audience who knew enough about piano to recognize the difficulty of what they'd just witnessed. The emotional intensity built. The music swelled. Nadia's whole body moved with it, now rocking gently, her shoulders dropping and rising, her face expressing the longing and beauty and ache that Chopin had written into every measure. This wasn't just technical proficiency. This was art. This was a young woman pouring her entire soul through her fingertips, letting the music speak everything she'd never been able to say with words. In the back row, Janet Williams was crying. Silent tears streamed down her face as she watched her daughter on that stage, finally being seen, finally being heard. Marcus gripped his mother's hand. Keisha had stopped bouncing and sat perfectly still, transfixed by her sister's playing. Mr. Davis had tears in his eyes, too. In 40 years of teaching, he'd encountered maybe a dozen students with this level of natural talent. To find it in someone who'd taught herself, who'd overcome so many obstacles, who'd been dismissed and mocked and underestimated, it was a rare and precious thing. He felt privileged to witness it. The piece moved toward its climax. The melody returned now, in a higher register, more intense, more urgent. The left hand pulsed beneath it, driving forward. Nadia's fingers flew across the keys, the music building and building, the emotional content reaching a fever pitch. This was the moment where Chopin's genius shone through, where beauty became almost unbearable in its intensity. And then gradually, it began to soften. The urgency faded. The melody descended back to its original range, became gentle again, contemplative. The ending approached those final phrases that had to be played with perfect touch and timing, the music growing quieter and quieter until it almost disappeared. Nadia played the last few measures with infinite tenderness. Each note was a whisper, a prayer, a goodbye. Her pedaling was impeccable, allowing the notes to blend just enough while maintaining clarity. Her touch was gossamer light coaxing sound from the piano, that was barely louder than breath. And then the final note. A single key pressed gently aloud to ring out, slowly fading into silence. Nadia's hands lifted from the keyboard and came to rest in her lap. Her head bowed. Her eyes remained closed. The silence that followed was profound. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, no one moved. The auditorium was utterly still, as if the 500 people in the room had collectively stopped breathing. The spell Nadia had cast held them all captive, no one willing to be the first to break it. Then someone in the balcony started clapping. It was a slow clap, at first deliberate and emphatic. Then another person joined in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium erupted. The applause was deafening, a thunderous wave of sound that crashed over the stage. People were on their feet. Not some of them, not most of them, but all of them. 500 people standing and clapping, and some of them cheering. Nadia's eyes opened. She looked out at the audience, dazed and disoriented, and saw what she'd never expected to see: a standing ovation. For her, the girl they'd set up to fail. The joke they'd thought would be so entertaining. Professor Chen was clapping vigorously, a huge smile on his face. Sandra Martinez was wiping her eyes, overcome. James Kowalski, the stern critic who rarely praised anyone, was nodding and clapping and looking at his fellow judges with an expression that said, "Did you just hear that?" The applause continued. People weren't stopping. They kept clapping and clapping, the sound echoing off the auditorium walls. Students who'd mocked her hours ago were now on their feet, some looking sheepish, some genuinely moved by what they'd heard. Parents who'd never noticed her existence were applauding with tears in their eyes. And Mrs. Bradford. She sat frozen in her third-row seat, the only person in the entire auditorium who wasn't standing. Her face had gone from red to white to gray, cycling through colors as the reality of what had just happened crashed over her. She'd set up this girl to fail. She'd encouraged her to perform as a joke, expecting humiliation and entertainment. And instead, Nadia Williams had just delivered one of the best performances in the history of the Spring Talent Showcase. The professional judges were on their feet. The audience was going wild. And Mrs. Bradford's cruelty had been exposed for everyone to see. She finally stood mechanically, her hands coming together in the slowest, most reluctant applause imaginable. But her face told the story. Shame, horror, the awful recognition of how wrong she'd been. Bethany Cooper was crying, but not happy tears. Her perfect makeup was running. She'd recorded the beginning of Nadia's performance, but had stopped when it became clear it wasn't going to be the disaster she'd expected. Now her phone sat in her lap, and she stared at the stage with something like devastation. She'd been cruel. She'd mocked. She'd made someone's life miserable for entertainment, and that person had just proven herself to be more talented than Bethany could ever hope to be. On stage, Nadia finally stood. Her legs were shaking so badly she almost fell, but she managed to stay upright. She bowed a simple, humble bow, and the applause somehow got even louder. People were whistling now, shouting. "Brava!" someone yelled from the balcony. "Brava, Mr. Patterson!" The principal rushed onto the stage, his face flushed with excitement, and something else, the dawning realization that his school had been harboring serious problems. He shook Nadia's hand vigorously, said something she couldn't hear over the applause, and then gestured for her to bow again. She did, and this time, she could see her family in the back. Her mother was standing on her seat, both arms raised, tears streaming down her face. Marcus was jumping up and down. Keisha was waving frantically. Mr. Davis in the very back corner nodded once, a gesture that said, "I told you, you were ready." The judges approached the stage. This wasn't part of the normal protocol. Usually they announced winners later, but Professor Chen couldn't wait. He climbed the stairs to the stage and pulled Nadia aside while the audience continued to applaud. "Young lady," he said, his voice urgent. "Where are you planning to study music after high school?" "I don't know," Nadia stammered. "I hadn't really thought." "You need to think about it now. That was conservatory-level playing." "Do you have a teacher?" "No, sir. I taught myself." Professor Chen's eyes widened. "You're self-taught?" "That's..." He stopped, shook his head. "We need to talk. After this is over, I need to talk to you and your parents. Immediately." Sandra Martinez and James Kowalski had joined them on stage now. Both were speaking rapidly, competing to be heard. Something about scholarships, about opportunities, about talent that couldn't be wasted. Nadia's head spun. She couldn't process what was happening. Finally, mercifully, Mr. Patterson herded everyone off stage so the program could conclude. Nadia walked into the wings, her whole body shaking. The backstage area, which had been chaotic before, was now eerily quiet. Every student, every stage crew member, every chaperone was staring at her. Some looked impressed. Some looked ashamed. Some looked jealous. But no one was laughing anymore. Nadia made her way to the backstage exit, needing air, needing space, needing to escape. She pushed through the door into the hallway and almost collided with her mother and siblings who'd run backstage to find her. Janet grabbed her daughter and pulled her into a crushing hug. Baby, oh my God, you were perfect. I was so scared," Mama Nadia sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I was so scared." I know, but you did it. You showed them all." Marcus and Keisha piled into the hug, and for a moment they just stood there in the hallway holding each other, while the sounds of the auditorium faded behind them. The Williams family together, having just witnessed something none of them would ever forget. When they finally pulled apart, Mr. Davis was there, leaning on his cleaning cart, that quiet smile on his weathered face. "Your daddy would have been so proud," he said simply. Nadia went to him, hugged him, and he patted her back gently. "You did good, child. You did real good. I couldn't have done it without you. Nonsense. That was all you up there. I just helped you see what was already in you." Back in the auditorium, the program was concluding. Mr. Patterson was thanking everyone for coming, reminding them that awards would be announced at the reception in the lobby. But everyone already knew. There was no question, no debate. Nadia Williams had won. And she'd won so decisively that every other performance paled in comparison. In the lobby, as people filed out, the conversation was about nothing else. Parents who'd never heard of Nadia were asking who she was, where she came from, how they'd never known about this prodigy at their school. Students were pulling up video on their phones, pieces of her performance that they'd recorded, sharing them, posting them to social media. Within an hour, those videos would be spreading across the internet. By tomorrow morning, they'd have hundreds of thousands of views. Mrs. Bradford slipped out a side door, unable to face the crowds, unable to hear the praise being heaped on the student she'd dismissed. Her career at Fairmont Prep was effectively over, and she knew it. She'd crossed a line. She'd let her prejudice and her cruelty guide her actions, and now it was being exposed for everyone to see. There would be consequences. Serious ones. But Nadia didn't know about any of that yet. She was still in the hallway with her family, trying to catch her breath, trying to process what had just happened. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her exhausted and shaky, but also strangely calm. She'd done it. The thing she'd been terrified of, the performance that had consumed her every waking moment for 3 weeks, it was over. And she hadn't just survived it, she'd triumphed. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. The reception in the lobby was supposed to be a casual affair, a chance for parents to mingle and students to celebrate. There would be refreshments, finger sandwiches, and cookies, and punch-in fancy glasses, and a brief awards ceremony where the judges would announce the winners in each category. It was usually pleasant and predictable, following the same script it had followed for decades. Tonight was different. The lobby was packed, far more crowded than usual because no one wanted to leave. They clustered in groups, talking animatedly, the energy electric. And at the center of every conversation was the same topic, Nadia Williams and that performance. Parents who'd never paid attention to the music program were suddenly experts discussing technique and interpretation. Students who'd been cruel just hours ago were now claiming they'd always known Nadia was talented. The hypocrisy was staggering. Nadia and her family had been pulled into a corner by Professor Chen and the other judges. They formed a protective circle around the Williams family, shielding them from the growing crowd of people who wanted to approach. Professor Chen was speaking rapidly to Janet, explaining something about scholarship opportunities at Tulane. Sandra Martinez had her phone out already, making calls to colleagues at other universities. James Kowalski was jotting notes on a business card, listing practice resources and potential teachers. Mrs. Williams, I need you to understand something Professor Chen was saying. Your daughter has a gift. A real, legitimate gift. The kind we see maybe once in a generation. She needs proper training, but more than that, she needs to be in an environment where that gift can flourish. Janet's face was overwhelmed. We can't afford full scholarship. Professor Chen interrupted. Full tuition, room board, everything. Believe me, schools will compete for a student like Nadia. You won't pay a dime. But she's only a junior, Janet said. She has another year of high school. Then we start planning now. We get her connected with teachers who can work with her this year. We prepare her for auditions. We make sure that when she graduates, every door is open. He looked at Nadia. If you want this, if music is what you want to pursue. Nadia's throat was tight. It is. It's all I've ever wanted. Professor Chen smiled. Then consider it done. Across the lobby, other conversations were happening. Bethany Cooper stood with her parents who'd witnessed the entire performance and were now looking at their daughter with new eyes. Bethany's father, a prominent lawyer, had recognized immediately what his daughter had done. The cruelty, the mockery, the setup, and now the embarrassment of having that behavior exposed. Did you know, he asked his daughter, his voice low and dangerous. Did you know she was that good when you encouraged her to sign up? Bethany couldn't meet his eyes. We thought, she's self-taught. She's from where, Bethany? From the poor side of town, from a black family. Her father's face was red. Do you have any idea how this looks? How this reflects on us, on you? Her mother put a hand on her husband's arm. We'll discuss this at home. But Bethany, you need to apologize. Tonight, before we leave. But Mom, tonight. Mrs. Bradford hadn't come to the reception. She'd left immediately after the performance, but her absence spoke volumes. Other teachers had noticed. They'd seen her expression during Nadia's performance, had watched the color drain from her face. And those who'd heard the rumors about the joke were now putting pieces together. Mr. Patterson, the principal, was livid. He'd pulled aside the two teachers who'd been with Mrs. Bradford that day in the hallway, Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Torres, and was questioning them quietly in a corner. Both looked deeply uncomfortable, trying to explain what had happened without implicating themselves too directly. So you're telling me, Mr. Patterson said, his voice cold, that Mrs. Bradford deliberately encouraged a student to perform, knowing full well it was meant to embarrass her. And you two witnessed this and said nothing. It wasn't like that exactly, Mr. Jenkins stammered. We didn't think. I mean, we didn't realize Nadia would actually what? Be good, Mr. Patterson's jaw was tight. Would actually have talent. Would actually embarrass you with her skill. Is that what you're saying? Ms. Torres had the grace to look ashamed. We made a mistake. A serious mistake. That's putting it mildly. Mr. Patterson looked around the lobby at the celebration happening at the crowds gathering around Nadia. Do you understand what could happen here? The lawsuits. The public relations nightmare. We have documented evidence of faculty members deliberately setting up a student for public humiliation. And not just any student, a black student from a low-income background on a diversity scholarship. Do you comprehend how catastrophically bad this is? Both teachers went pale. Mrs. Bradford will be put on administrative leave Monday morning, Mr. Patterson continued. Pending a full investigation. As for you two, we'll be discussing your future employment at this school very soon. Meanwhile, Bethany Cooper had finally worked up the courage to approach Nadia. She wove through the crowd, her steps hesitant, until she stood at the edge of the circle surrounding the Williams family. Professor Chen noticed her and paused his conversation. Yes, he asked, his tone not unkind, but certainly not warm. Bethany's voice cracked. Could I speak to Nadia? Please, just for a minute. Nadia looked at her mother, who nodded slightly. Professor Chen and the other judges stepped back, giving them space, but staying close enough to intervene if necessary. Bethany and Nadia faced each other. Bethany's perfect makeup was ruined from crying. Her designer dress suddenly seemed garish and excessive. Next to Nadia's simple navy dress and quiet dignity, Bethany looked small. I'm sorry, Bethany said, the words coming out in a rush. I'm so sorry. What we did, it was cruel and wrong, and I don't have any excuse. I was jealous and mean, and I wanted you to fail, and I'm so sorry. Nadia studied her for a long moment. She could see that the apology was genuine, that Bethany was genuinely horrified by her own behavior. But she could also see that the apology was motivated partly by fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of how this made Bethany look. Fear of her parents' reaction. Why, Nadia asked quietly. Why did you hate me so much? Bethany's face crumpled. I didn't hate you. I don't hate you. You weren't supposed to be better than me. I've had lessons since I was 4. My parents spent thousands of dollars. I practice every day. I've won competitions. And you just... She gestured helplessly. You taught yourself, on a broken piano, and you're better than I'll ever be. How is that fair? It's not about fair, Nadia said. It was never about that. I didn't practice to beat you. I practiced because I love music, because it's the only thing I have of my father. Because it's the one place where I can be myself without anyone judging me. I judged you. We all judged you, and we were wrong. Yes, Nadia agreed simply. You were. Bethany wiped her eyes. Can you forgive me? Eventually, I know I don't deserve it. But Nadia considered this. She thought about her mother's teachings about dignity and grace. She thought about her father who'd never spoken ill of anyone. She thought about how much energy she'd wasted being angry and afraid and hurt. I don't know, she said honestly. Not yet. But maybe someday. If you actually change, if you become someone different than who you were today. It wasn't the absolution Bethany had hoped for, but it was more than she deserved. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. Thank you for even considering it. She started to walk away, then turned back. You were incredible up there. Truly. I've never heard anyone play like that. Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd, and Nadia felt something shift in her chest. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of letting go. The anger that had fueled her for weeks was fading, replaced by something else. Pride. Relief. The knowledge that she'd proven herself beyond any shadow of doubt. What no one in the auditorium knew yet was that Nadia's performance had already begun its journey beyond the walls of Fairmont Prep. Madison Price, despite her role in the bullying, had recorded significant portions of the performance on her phone. She'd posted it to TikTok during the reception, without really thinking about it, just sharing something impressive she'd witnessed. The video exploded. Within 30 minutes, it had 1,000 views. Within an hour, 10,000. By the time the reception ended and people were heading home, the video had been shared across multiple platforms and was pushing 100,000 views. The algorithm had grabbed it and wouldn't let go. The caption Madison had written was simple self-taught pianist at our school talent show. She's never had a lesson. Wait for it. The wait for it was the moment when the mockery in the crowd turned to stunned silence visible in the video as the camera panned across shocked faces. Comments flooded in. This gave me chills. The way that room went silent. I've been playing piano for 15 years and I'm not this good. The girls laughing at the beginning and then their faces when she starts playing. This is what real talent looks like. Someone get this girl a scholarship, immediately. Other audience members had posted their own recordings. Different angles, different moments, all capturing the same phenomenon. A young black girl they'd underestimated delivering a performance that stunned professionals. The narrative was irresistible. Underdog, hidden talent, prejudice exposed, triumph against odds. By Sunday morning, the combined videos had 5 million views. By Monday, they were being shared by classical music accounts with massive followings. Professional musicians were weighing in, dissecting Nadia's technique, praising her interpretation. Someone identified the specific Chopin piece and pointed out its difficulty level. Music teachers were using the videos in classes as examples of natural musicality. The story grew beyond just the performance. Reporters started digging. They found out about Mrs. Bradford's behavior. They found students willing to talk about the joke and the bullying. They found out about Nadia's background, the self-teaching, the broken piano, the scholarship to Fairmont Prep, the loss of her father. The narrative became teachers mock black girl's piano dream as joke. Her performance silences them. News outlets picked it up. Local stations in Louisiana, then regional networks, then national morning shows. CNN ran a segment. Good Morning America reached out for an interview. The story had everything media loved: injustice, redemption, talent, emotion. Nadia's phone, an old iPhone her mother had bought used, started getting notifications it couldn't handle. Friend requests on Facebook from strangers. Instagram followers jumping from 200 to 20,000 overnight. Email inquiries from journalists, from schools, from talent agents and managers. But Sunday night, when all this was just beginning, Nadia didn't know about any of it. She was at home exhausted and emotionally drained, sitting on her bed, while Marcus and Keisha peppered her with questions, and her mother made celebratory fried chicken in the kitchen. The bow tie her father had given Mr. Davis, which had been returned to her, sat on her nightstand. Tomorrow she'd have to go back to school. Tomorrow there would be consequences and conversations and changes she couldn't predict. But tonight she just wanted to be home. Monday morning, Fairmont Prep was chaos. News vans were parked outside the school gates. Reporters tried to interview students as they arrived. The administration had locked down campus, refusing media access, but that didn't stop journalists from gathering outside, cameras ready. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Everyone had seen the videos by now. They'd gone viral enough that you couldn't escape them. They were on every social media platform, being discussed on news shows, shared by celebrities and influencers. Fairmont Prep, which prided itself on being an elite, prestigious institution, was now famous for all the wrong reasons. Mr. Patterson called an emergency faculty meeting before first period. In the conference room, teachers sat in uncomfortable silence as the principal outlined the situation. Mrs. Bradford had been placed on administrative leave. Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Torres were being formally reprimanded. An outside investigator would be reviewing the school's policies on discrimination and bullying. "Let me be clear," Mr. Patterson said, his voice hard. "What happened Friday night was a failure of our faculty to protect a student, a failure of our culture to value students equitably, a failure of our values to match our stated mission. And it happened on our watch in our school with our implicit approval through inaction." Several teachers shifted uncomfortably. Moving forward, there will be changes. Mandatory diversity training for all staff, revised protocols for scholarship students, a new committee to review cases of potential discrimination, and most importantly, a cultural shift in how we view and value all students, regardless of their background or financial status. He pulled up one of the viral videos on the projector. The room watched in silence as Nadia played, as the audience's reaction shifted from mockery to awe. "That young woman, Mr. Patterson said when the video ended, has more talent, more determination, and more character than most people develop in a lifetime. And we almost destroyed her. We almost took that gift and crushed it under the weight of our prejudice and assumptions. We're lucky, extremely lucky, that she's strong enough to have survived our failures. But we won't get another chance. The world is watching now, so we need to decide what kind of school we're going to be." The meeting ended with directives and assignments. Teachers filed out quietly, many looking chastened, some defensive, a few genuinely moved to reconsider their own biases. In the hallways, students reacted differently to the viral fame. Some were embarrassed, especially those who'd been caught on camera laughing or mocking Nadia. Their cruelty was now preserved forever on the internet, their faces visible, their names being identified and shared. It was a harsh lesson in consequences. Others rallied around Nadia. Suddenly everyone wanted to be her friend. People who'd never spoken to her approached in the hallways, offering congratulations, asking questions, seeking association with someone who'd become famous. The hypocrisy was stunning, but Nadia handled it with grace, accepting the compliments politely while remaining guarded. Mrs. Bradford never returned to Fairmont Prep. She submitted her resignation letter on Wednesday, effective immediately. The official statement cited personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. Her name had been dragged through the mud online. Parents had demanded her removal. The school board had made it clear that her continued employment was untenable. Some felt sorry for her. Others felt she got exactly what she deserved. But the consensus was clear: what she'd done was unacceptable, and there had to be consequences. Bethany Cooper's life changed too. Her parents, horrified by her behavior and the public exposure, enrolled her in community service programs and required her to meet with a counselor. She'd lost her position in the school's honor society. Several of her friends had distanced themselves, not wanting to be associated with someone whose cruelty had been so publicly exposed. To her credit, Bethany seemed genuinely remorseful. She started volunteering at a community center on the south side of town, teaching beginning piano to kids who couldn't afford lessons. It was a small step toward redemption, but it was something. The school itself underwent changes. A scholarship fund was established specifically for music students from underserved communities. The arts program received additional funding, and equipment that had been reserved for certain students was made available to everyone. Mr. Davis was recognized publicly for his years of quiet mentorship, and his janitorial position was converted to a part-time teaching position, allowing him to officially work with students who needed guidance. And Nadia, the opportunities that flooded in were overwhelming. Professor Chen made good on his promise. She had a guaranteed full scholarship to Tulane's music program if she wanted it. But Tulane wasn't the only school interested. Juilliard reached out. Berkeley, the Curtis Institute. Conservatories across the country extended invitations for her to audition. A local piano store moved by her story, and seeing the marketing opportunity, donated a fully restored baby grand piano to the Williams family. They delivered it on a Saturday, bringing it into that cramped living room on Cypress Street where it barely fit. The old Baldwin was moved to the community center where Mr. Davis restored it and used it to teach children just like Nadia had been. James Kowalski offered Nadia free lessons at his music school for her remaining time in high school. She accepted, and for the first time in her life, Nadia had a professional teacher guiding her development. But she never forgot the years of self-teaching, the struggle with the broken piano, the nights of doubt and determination. Those years had made her who she was. The viral videos eventually faded from the top of social media feeds, replaced by the next trending story, as always happened. But they never disappeared entirely. They lived on the internet, permanent documentation of that night, when a 17-year-old girl proved that talent and dignity couldn't be suppressed by prejudice and cruelty. Nadia's life was forever changed. But through it all, she remained grounded by her mother's teachings, her father's memory, and the knowledge that she'd earned everything that was coming to her. No one had given her anything. She'd worked for it, fought for it, bled for it. And in the end, that made all the difference. September brought changes. Nadia had made her decision over the summer, and now she stood on the campus of the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia, one of the most prestigious music conservatories in the world. Her acceptance had come with a full scholarship that covered not just tuition, but living expenses, making it possible for her to attend without burdening her mother. The campus was beautiful in early fall. The historic buildings bathed in golden light, students hurrying between practice rooms and classes with instrument cases and sheet music. Everything here was about music. The students lived it, breathed it, dedicated their entire lives to it. For the first time, Nadia was surrounded by people who understood her passion, who shared her commitment. She'd been assigned a practice room on the third floor of the main building, a small space with excellent acoustics and a stunning Steinway grand. This piano responded to her touch like nothing she'd ever experienced. Every subtle variation in pressure, every nuance of phrasing, it all translated perfectly into sound. After years on the broken Baldwin and stolen practice sessions on school pianos, having her own dedicated instrument felt like a dream. Her teacher was Dr. Margaret Brennan, a renowned pianist who'd performed with orchestras around the world before transitioning to teaching. Dr. Brennan was demanding but fair, pushing Nadia to refine her technique while respecting the emotional authenticity that made her playing special. "You have something rare," Dr. Brennan had told her during their first lesson. "You've developed your musicality before your technique, which is unusual. Most students I get are technically proficient, but emotionally hollow. You're the opposite. Our job is to give you the technical foundation to match your artistic vision." The work was intense, 8 hours of practice daily, music theory classes that made her brain hurt, ensemble work, master classes where she performed for faculty, and visiting artists who offered critiques that were sometimes harsh, but always valuable. Nadia had never worked harder in her life, but she'd also never been happier. She video called her family twice a week. Janet had cried every time they talked for the first month, proud and sad in equal measure about her daughter being so far away. Marcus and Keisha gave her updates on school and neighborhood gossip. The family was doing better financially. Janet had received a raise at the nursing home, and the publicity from Nadia's story had led to some local donations that helped cover bills. The community had rallied around them, proud of one of their own making it. Mr. Davis called too, checking in, offering encouragement. He'd started a piano program at the Bayou Ridge Community Center, teaching kids from the South Side who couldn't afford lessons. He sent Nadia videos of his students' progress, their small triumphs, their growing confidence. She watched them and remembered being that age, trying to teach herself, dreaming of something beyond the confines of her neighborhood. Nadia's first recital at Curtis was scheduled for late October, a requirement for all first-year students. She'd chosen her program carefully, the Chopin Nocturne that had changed her life, a Beethoven sonata, and a contemporary piece by an African-American composer. The performance was open to faculty and students, only a low-pressure introduction to performing in this new environment. But when she walked onto the small recital hall stage and saw the familiar faces of her classmates and teachers, Nadia felt none of the terror she'd experienced at Fairmont Prep. This was different. These people understood music. They weren't here to mock or judge based on prejudice. They were here to listen, to appreciate, to offer constructive feedback. She played the Chopin first, the same piece but somehow different now. Deeper, more refined. The technical improvements Dr. Brennan had given her were evident, but the emotional core remained unchanged, that raw honesty, that willingness to be vulnerable, that connection to her father and her journey. When she finished, the applause was warm and genuine. A colleague nodded in respect. Dr. Brennan smiled. And Nadia realized something important: she belonged here. Not because of viral fame or sympathy for her background, but because she was genuinely talented enough to compete at this level. After the recital, several students approached her. They wanted to collaborate to form chamber groups to study together. These were friendships built on mutual respect and shared passion, not the toxic dynamics she'd experienced at Fairmont Prep. Nadia let herself relax into these relationships cautiously, but hopefully. Thanksgiving break brought Nadia back to Louisiana. The plane ticket had been a gift from Professor Chen, who'd stayed in touch and continued to mentor her from afar. When she walked off the plane at Louis Armstrong Airport, she saw her entire family waiting: Janet, Marcus, Keisha, even Mr. Davis, all holding a handmade sign that read, "Welcome home, Nadia." The drive back to Bayou Ridge felt strange. Nadia had only been gone a couple months, but everything looked different somehow. Smaller. The poverty seemed more stark, the limitations more obvious. But she also saw beauty she'd taken for granted: the Spanish moss hanging from the oak trees, the warmth of neighbors waving from porches, the way the afternoon sun turned everything golden. The house on Cypress Street looked exactly the same, except for the beautiful baby grand piano, now sitting where the old Baldwin used to be. That piano dominated the small living room, its black surface gleaming, its presence almost absurd in the cramped space. But it was theirs, paid for, and permanent, a symbol of how far they'd come. That weekend, Nadia gave a free concert at the Bayou Ridge Community Center. Mr. Davis had organized it, spreading the word throughout the neighborhood. The community center's main room was packed with folding chairs filled with people from the South Side who'd watched Nadia grow up, who'd heard her practicing through open windows, who'd followed her journey with pride. She played for 2 hours, classical pieces she'd mastered at Curtis, but also hymns her father used to play, gospel songs that had everyone swaying and humming along. She played for her community, for the people who'd supported her family through the hardest times, for the kids in the audience who needed to see that someone like them could make it. The applause was different than at Curtis or at Fairmont Prep. This was family applause filled with genuine love and pride. These people knew her. They'd known her father. They understood what this achievement meant, not just for Nadia, but for all of them, proof that talent and determination could overcome systemic barriers. After the concert, children gathered around the piano, touching the keys with reverent fingers. Nadia showed them basic techniques, encouraged them to try answered questions. One girl, maybe 9 years old, asked shyly, "Did you really teach yourself?" "I did," Nadia said, "with a lot of help from people who believed in me, and a lot of practice. Could I do it too?" Nadia looked at this child, seeing herself at that age full of dreams and doubt. "Yes, you absolutely could. It won't be easy, but if you want it enough, you can do it." The girl's face lit up, and Nadia felt something shift in her chest. This was important. More important maybe than any concert hall performance. This was passing forward the hope and encouragement she'd received. During the visit, Nadia also met with Mr. Patterson, the principal at Fairmont Prep. He'd reached out through email, asking if she'd be willing to speak to the student body about her experience. Nadia had hesitated, not sure she wanted to return to that place, but her mother had encouraged her to go. "They need to hear from you," Janet had said. "They need to understand what they did and how to do better." So Nadia agreed. On the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, she walked back through the gates of Fairmont Prep. The place looked the same, but the atmosphere felt different. Students stared as she walked through the hallways, some looking awed, others ashamed. Teachers nodded respectfully. Everything had changed. The assembly was held in the same auditorium where she'd performed. As Nadia walked onto that stage again, memories flooded back, the terror, the determination, the moment when everything shifted. But this time she walked on with confidence, head held high. She spoke for 30 minutes about her experience, about the bullying and discrimination she'd faced, about how it felt to be judged based on background rather than ability. But she also talked about resilience, about finding strength in hardship, about the importance of advocating for yourself even when the world seems stacked against you. "I'm not here to shame anyone," she said near the end. What happened happened. We can't change it, but we can learn from it. You can learn from it. Everyone in this room has the power to make someone feel seen or invisible, valued or worthless. That's a huge responsibility. Use it wisely. The auditorium was silent. Some students were crying. Teachers looked moved. And in the back row, Nadia noticed, sat Bethany Cooper, listening intently. After the assembly, Bethany approached her backstage. They hadn't spoken since the night of the talent show. "Thank you for coming," Bethany said quietly. "For speaking to us. I know it couldn't have been easy to come back here." "It wasn't," Nadia admitted. "But I think it was necessary, for both of us." "I've been working on myself," Bethany said, "trying to understand why I was so cruel. My therapist says it was about my own insecurity, about feeling like my worth came from being better than other people. That's not an excuse, but it's something I'm trying to change." Nadia studied her for a moment. She could see the difference. Bethany seemed less polished, more genuine, like she'd shed some protective layer. "That's good. Real change is hard. Most people don't even try." "I want you to know," Bethany continued, her voice breaking slightly, "that what you said in there about using our power wisely, I hear that. And I'm going to try to be better. Not just try, I'm going to be better." This time when Nadia nodded, there was a hint of warmth in her expression. Not quite forgiveness, but acceptance. Recognition that people could grow, could change, could become more than their worst moments. "I believe you," Nadia said simply. Nadia's story had become bigger than just her personal journey. In the year following the viral performance, real change happened in ways large and small. Fairmont Prep underwent a comprehensive review of its scholarship program and admission practices. They increased funding for students from low-income backgrounds, not just for tuition, but for all the hidden costs, books, activities, uniforms, that made it difficult for scholarship students to fully participate. They instituted a mentoring program pairing scholarship students with faculty advocates. The changes weren't perfect, but they were real. Other private schools in Louisiana watching the public relations crisis at Fairmont Prep preemptively reviewed their own policies. The conversation about access and equity in education, which had been happening in academic circles for years, suddenly had a face and a story that made it impossible to ignore. Music programs specifically saw a surge of interest and funding. Donors who'd been moved by Nadia's story contributed to programs serving underserved communities. The Bayou Ridge Community Center's piano program, led by Mr. Davis, expanded to include violin, guitar, and voice lessons. Other community centers in poor neighborhoods across the state started similar initiatives. A nonprofit organization called Second Chance Pianos formed, dedicated to restoring donated pianos and placing them in homes where children showed musical aptitude but lacked resources. Nadia became a spokesperson for the organization, filming public service announcements and participating in fundraising events when her schedule allowed. Publishers reached out about book deals. She declined most of them, not ready to monetize her story, but she did agree to work with a music education nonprofit on a curriculum that combined classical piano instruction with the kind of self-directed learning that had served her so well. The curriculum would be offered free to schools and community centers, making quality music education accessible regardless of funding. Nadia's viral performance videos continued to circulate, gathering new audiences. Music teachers showed them in classes as examples of natural musicality. Motivational speakers used her story in presentations about overcoming adversity. Think pieces were written about talent versus training, about systemic barriers in education, about the power of determination. But perhaps the most important impact was quieter and harder to measure. In living rooms and community centers and school music rooms across the country, young people, especially young Black girls, saw Nadia's story and thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too. They sat at keyboards and guitars and violins and decided to try to push through doubt and discouragement to believe in their own potential. Letters arrived at Curtis Institute, addressed to Nadia. Dozens, then hundreds of them. Children writing about how her story inspired them to start learning an instrument. Parents thanking her for giving their kids hope. Teachers describing students who'd rediscovered their passion for music after seeing the viral videos. Nadia tried to respond to as many as she could, but eventually, there were too many. So she started a blog posting weekly about her experiences at Curtis, about practice techniques, about dealing with self-doubt, about balancing artistry and technical improvement. The blog became popular, a resource for young musicians who saw themselves in her journey. In December of her first year at Curtis, Nadia was invited to perform at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., as part of a showcase of emerging classical talents. It was the biggest stage she'd played, on a far cry from the Fairmont Prep auditorium. Her family flew up for the performance, along with Mr. Davis and Professor Chen. She played several pieces, but she opened with the Chopin Nocturne, always the Chopin. It had become her signature piece, the one that represented her journey. Every time she played it, she thought about that night at the talent show, about the fear and the triumph, about proving wrong everyone who'd doubted her. The Kennedy Center audience gave her a standing ovation. Critics in the major publications wrote glowing reviews. One described her as a once-in-a-generation talent combining technical brilliance with profound emotional depth. Another called her the future of classical piano performance. But the moment that meant the most came backstage when her mother pulled her aside, tears streaming down her face. "Your daddy," Janet said, her voice breaking. "Baby, your daddy would have been so proud. Not just of your playing, but of who you've become. The way you handled everything with grace and strength. The way you're giving back. He would have been so proud." Nadia hugged her mother, and in that embrace was everything grief and joy and gratitude and love, all tangled together in a way that only family could understand. 5 years later, Nadia Williams, now 22 years old, returned to Bayou Ridge for a special occasion. The community center where Mr. Davis taught had expanded, adding a dedicated music wing with proper practice rooms and instruments. It was being officially dedicated, and Nadia had been invited to perform at the ceremony. She arrived the day before to visit her family and see how much the neighborhood had changed. Some things were the same. The railroad tracks still divided the town. The houses on Cypress Street still showed their age. But there were differences, too. New businesses on Main Street. A community garden where an empty lot used to be. Fresh paint on the community center. Signs of hope, small but real. The Williams house was fuller now. Marcus was in high school, already taller than Nadia, and showing interest in engineering. Keisha, now 14, had followed in her sister's footsteps and was learning piano. Not to pursue it professionally, her passion was science, but because the piano connected her to family history, to her grandfather and sister. The baby grand still dominated the living room. Keisha practiced on it every day, and Nadia smiled listening to her sister work through a Beethoven sonatina. The sound quality was different from the instruments at Curtis or the concert halls, where Nadia now regularly performed, but there was something comforting about it. This piano represented home. Janet had finally been able to quit one of her jobs. Between Nadia's occasional earnings from performances and the community support that had followed her rise to fame, the family was stable in a way they'd never been before. Janet looked younger, somehow less worn down, as if releasing years of stress had given her back time. That evening, Nadia visited Mr. Davis at his small apartment near the community center. He was frailer now, moving slowly, but his mind was sharp and his spirit unchanged. They sat in his living room, surrounded by photographs of students he'd taught over the decades, and talked about music and life and legacy. "You know what I'm most proud of," Mr. Davis said. "Not that you became famous, not the awards or the concerts. I'm proud that you didn't forget where you came from, that you're using your success to lift others up. That matters more than any performance ever could." Nadia took his weathered hand in hers. "I had good teachers. You taught me that music without purpose is just sound." He smiled. "Your daddy taught you that. I just reminded you." The dedication ceremony the next day drew a crowd that spilled out of the community center into the parking lot. The mayor was there along with local politicians eager to be photographed with Nadia. Professor Chen had flown in from Tulane. Dr. Brennan sent a video message from Philadelphia. But mostly the audience was filled with community members, families from the South Side. Former students of Mr. Davis, children currently learning instruments in the program, people who'd followed Nadia's journey from the beginning. Before the performances began, Mr. Patterson, now retired from Fairmont Prep, approached Nadia. They'd stayed in touch sporadically over the years, his emails always apologetic, always checking in. He'd taken the events of that talent show personally, seeing them as his failure as much as anyone's. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for speaking at the school that day, for handling everything with such grace. You taught us as much as we ever taught you." "More probably. We taught each other," Nadia replied. "That's how it's supposed to work." When it was time for her to perform, Nadia walked to the piano. Not the school's piano, but the old Baldwin from her childhood home, which Mr. Davis had finally restored to playable condition. It would never sound like a concert grand, but it had character and history and meaning. This was the piano on which she'd taught herself. The piano that connected her to her father. The piano that had witnessed every late-night practice session, every moment of doubt, every small victory. She sat on the bench and looked out at the audience. So many familiar faces. Her mother in the front row crying before Nadia had even played a note. Marcus and Keisha beside her. Mr. Davis in his chair, smiling that quiet smile. Former classmates from Fairmont Prep, including Bethany, who'd driven down from New Orleans where she now worked as a social worker. Children from the music program, their eyes wide with excitement and possibility. And in the back, standing quietly, were the spirits of all those who'd come before her father, certainly, but also all the other musicians and dreamers from the south side of Bayou Ridge who'd never gotten the chances they deserved. Their dreams had made her dream possible. Their sacrifices had paved the road she walked. Nadia placed her hands on the keys of the old Baldwin and began to play. Not the Chopin this time. She'd played that piece hundreds of times in the years since the talent show, perfecting it, making it hers. Today she played something else, a gospel hymn her father used to love, "His eye is on the sparrow." Simple and beautiful and full of faith. A song about being seen when the world tries to make you invisible. About being valued when society says you don't matter. About flying despite broken wings. The melody filled the community center, pouring out through open doors into the neighborhood beyond. And in that moment, as Nadia played on the piano, where she'd learned to transform pain into beauty, as her community listened and remembered and hoped everything that had happened, the struggle, the mockery, the triumph, the change, it all made sense. Every difficult moment had been necessary. Every obstacle had taught her something essential. Every person who'd believed in her and every person who'd doubted her had played their role in making her who she'd become. She was Nadia Williams, daughter of James and Janet. Sister, musician, teacher, advocate, survivor, thriver. Living proof that talent doesn't require wealth, that dignity transcends circumstances, and that sometimes the most powerful response to those who try to make you small is simply to show them how wrong they were. The last note of the hymn faded into silence. Then came the applause, warm and genuine, and full of love. And Nadia smiled because she knew, finally completely knew, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. This was her story, hard won and honestly lived, and it was just beginning.